Okay, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Malden School Committee meeting. Today is Monday, October 15th, and this is our regularly scheduled meeting for the month of October. I'd ask everyone first to please rise and pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please remain standing for a moment of silence in honor of our veterans who have given their life in defense of our country and who continue to fight for us overseas. Thank you. Clerk will call the roll. Here.
Mr. Bob? Here. Mr. Capucci? Here. Ms. Maria? Here. Mr. Sack? Here. Mr. Floria? Here. Mr. Iavino?
Here.
Mr. Weldy?
Here.
Mr. Winslow?
Here.
Superintendent DeRusi?
Here.
Assistant Superintendent Chase? Here. Student Representative Catherine Corner? Here.
Okay, sufficient quorum to conduct business. Our first order of business will be just a few housekeeping details. I want to let everyone here know that the Policy and Procedures Subcommittee meeting will be meeting October 17th at 5 p.m. to continue work on the superintendent's evaluation. If another meeting is needed, that will be on Saturday, October 20th at the Malden Public Library at 2 p.m. But please check the calendar. That will be announced after October 17th. Another meeting of the Policy Subcommittee will take place on October 22nd at 5 p.m. That'll be down in Central Office, and among the topics that will be covered are Michael's Law and the emergency plans for our schools, among many other topics. And then the next regularly scheduled school committee meeting will take place on Monday, November 19th, and that will be at 6 o'clock here in the City Council chamber. Are there any questions? If none, we'll proceed to item 1, which is the approval of the minutes. In your packet, you have the regular session minutes of September 10th as well as the executive session minutes of September 10th. Are there any questions of the members? Mr. Winslow.
I just noticed one correction on page 2 under the public comment. It was David Conley and Karen Hayes who spoke about the FAME program. So just that it said Kara Hayes. I think that's referring to Karen Hayes, I believe, right?
Okay, so noted. Nancy, you have that?
Yeah,
Okay,
right, so.
have it. Anybody else? Mr. Weldy.
Just an addition or a point of clarification for the minutes. I'm hoping we can add on page 2, the second paragraph under superintendent's reports. I think it's important just to put in there that we did make a motion to approve to engage in contract negotiations, but I think it's important to throw in that we also, the caveat was not to exceed a total of $19,576. So that way we have the max amount that we voted to engage them in the actual minutes.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Weldy. Anybody else have suggestions, concerns, queries, qualms? Okay, if I could, I just want to make a note on page 2, first paragraph, about a task force to investigate the possibility of changing from textbooks to electronic books. As you may recall, Mr. Weldy agreed to take a look into this. He is going to update the body at the next meeting in November. I just want to assure that parent, the resident who spoke to us, that we are indeed working on it. And then there was one other item of note, which was about the defib equipment, whether or not that would be moved around the district, I believe, in different spots, and the superintendent says his administration's continuing to work on fulfilling that decision that the school committee made last month. Okay, so are there any other questions? Hearing none, we have a motion by Mr. Weldy to adopt the minutes as amended, seconded by Ms. Doucette. Anybody else have discussion on these minutes before we move to adopt? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? The ayes have it. The minutes are adopted as amended. The next order of business is public comment. This is the opportunity for residents and stakeholders across the city to speak with the Malden School Committee. I'd ask anybody that wishes to do so to please step forward, state your name and address for the record.
My name's Christy Dalton, and I'm just wondering, why didn't the police officer further investigate my daughter?
Okay, Superintendent?
The police, that is very separate of the schools. I mean, that's a question you would have to direct to the police, why they chose not to do any further investigating of that incident. Again, the school took it upon itself to dig into it a little bit deeper and try to find and resolve what happened on that day. But we cannot answer for the police department.
Okay.
Okay, and what I'm going to do tomorrow, too, I have my weekly meeting with the police chief and
Yep.
his staff. I'll try and find out as well. And
Okay.
then we'll circle back with you.
And
okay?
how come Lester's never at the meetings?
Say it again?
How come Lester's not here?
Okay, stand by 1 second. Superintendent DeRusi. And then after that, we're going to have to move on. What we try to do with this part of the agenda is to, allow people to come up and make statements, but we try to avoid Q&A. So let me see if the superintendent can answer this, and then we'll move from there.
Ms. Dalton, as you know, I gave you a call right
Yeah.
around 4 o'clock that Lester Moravich has requested not to attend the meeting in person tonight, that he wanted to have a meeting with the chair, which would be Mayor Christensen,
Okay.
at a later date. And during that discussion, we would then work together to bring Lester or other parties together that need to be to bring this matter to a resolution.
But it seems to be like he's avoiding everything.
Oh, he's not. I mean, he's been communicating, and I think my goal as chairman and as mayor of the city is to have a meeting at some point
Now,
soon.
does he drug test his people?
Well, if I could just finish, Ms. Dalton.
Okay.
What I'm hoping to do is have a meeting with you, me, the superintendent, and the owner of
Okay.
Malden Taxi to see if we can
All right.
figure out once and for all what occurred and how we are going
Okay.
to move forward.
All right.
Okay?
I'm just wondering, does he drug test his people or background
I'm not
them?
sure. We'll find that out when we have our
Okay,
meeting.
because, I mean, a couple people come up to me and say they don't drug test them and they don't do core evaluations on them.
Yeah, we'll find that
So-
out. Okay?
Okay,
All
thank
right,
you.
so we will be in touch, Ms. Dalton. Anybody else wishing to address the Malden School Committee, please step forward, state your name and address for the record.
Hi, I'm Dorothy Lay. I live at 832 Salem Street.
Okay?
I
Welcome.
have 3 children at Salem Wood Elementary School, and I heard that you were having the school uniforms on the agenda tonight. I actually have to leave to go to another board meeting, but
Okay.
I just wanted to say that I really hope you guys consider this.
Okay.
Because for one, it'll help, cut back the bullying.
Okay.
And 2, it'll be much more cost-effective as a mother of 3
Okay.
for me to get my kids, suited and well ready for school. I can save the extra money for other stuff.
Okay.
Okay?
Thank you very much. Yeah. And for the record, Ms. Di Maria from Ward 3 has been looking into the issue, but I don't think there is anything on the agenda per se tonight. Is there? Yeah, there is. Okay. What we could do, if it would be helpful, Ms. Di Maria can connect with you tomorrow to let you know what did occur tonight, and then we can take it from there. So maybe, do you have her information, Ms. Di Maria? Yeah, maybe if you could just leave that with the student representative who will get it to Ms. Di Maria. Your email address and phone number. We'll have Ms. Di Maria reconnect with you tomorrow.
Thank you.
Anybody else wishing to address the school committee tonight? Please step forward, state your name and address for the record. Going once, going twice. Okay, thank you. We'll close that portion of the meeting. The next order of business, item 3, is the superintendent's report. Superintendent DeRusi.
Thank you, Mayor Christensen. As I stated to Mrs. Dalton a few minutes ago, Lester Moravich has requested not to appear this evening and that he would like a meeting with the chair to discuss some of the outlying situations that he feels needs to be addressed with the chair. So we will work on that, and a tentative date would be next Tuesday for that to happen. At this time, I would like to bring to the podium a gentleman I've asked to come in. His name is Ray Shirtliff. We're looking at this is a good year to open up and look at everything we're doing. So a human resource audit seemed like a natural progression. When you're dealing with human resource issues, they are definitely becoming more complex, not only in the business world, but also as you're facing in a school district. Mistakes in dealing with human resource situations can cost the school district in many ways. Now, in my second year, I'm beginning to realize that this is an area the district needs to be reviewed on to ensure that we're complying with the changing laws of this field. So I've asked Mr. Shirtliff to come. You have a proposal, HR School Solutions. Mr. Shirtliff, I'll allow you to speak to that.
Okay. Thank you very much, Superintendent. Good evening, members of the school committee, Mayor. I'd like to give a brief background for our organization. HR School Solutions is a three-principal group. It started this past summertime. My colleague, Don McCallion, and I will be hopefully working on the assessment and audit with the superintendent and the assistant superintendent. My colleague, Don McCallion, could not be here this evening. He runs the Commonwealth Leadership Academy, which has been a leadership program developed since 2003 here in the Commonwealth. He was a personnel administrator in Framingham Public Schools for 18 years, and since 1994 has been the executive director of the Mass Association of School Personnel Administrators, which represents 110 school districts here in Massachusetts, the premier school personnel organization in the state. I have been both a high school administrator in Cambridge, a human resource director in the Newton Public Schools for almost 7 years, in the Boston Public Schools for almost 4 years. I retired from 80-hour-week work for 3 months, and since then I've been consulting. I've been an interim HR director 3 times in the Fall River Public Schools, helping them with HR director searches and also doing the work in support of the superintendent in that district. I also served as an interim HR director in the largest charter school in Massachusetts, the Boston Renaissance Charter School, doing the same thing, helping them find an HR director and also doing the work for 6 months. The past 2 years I've been interim HR director. These are all 2 to 3 days a week positions in the Watertown Public Schools. I did finish that work in July. I do some other consulting with the NEA Foundation Institute for Teaching and Learning. I'm a member of the I'm a lecturer in the Education Leadership Department at UMass Boston, where I teach a personnel course and supervise a practicum seminar for school principal candidates. I would simply state that if you look at your school budget, and while I have not looked at your particular school budget, approximately 80% of your budget is related to school personnel. The human resource management function of school districts is so critical to the work that we do to improve student achievement. And Don McCallion and I have met with Superintendent DeRossi and Assistant Superintendent Chase to review their interest in taking a look at the work of the Malden Public Schools, soup to nuts, if you will, from recruitment, selection, induction to performance evaluation, employee relations, et cetera. Take a look at how those functions are operating. And we have an audit checklist that we use to help us that is almost 5 pages of functions that fall under the human resource management umbrella. And in a school district, a variety of people perform those duties. In the central office, currently, as we understand it, the work may fall upon a smaller number of people. You do not have a specific, as you well know, HR director or personnel director. The work is done by the central office staff, superintendent and assistant superintendent. And we're here to kind of do some interviews, do some assessment, give you some recommendations and perhaps some commendations too, to help you take a look at this critical work. And
Okay.
I'd be glad to answer any questions that you have.
Questions of the members? Mr. Winslow.
Yeah, I know, it's actually good timing because I know the Superintendent Evaluation Committee, we were looking at the criteria we should be looking at as a school committee, and human resource management is one of those elements. So, and we actually didn't have that much on this, so it's very good. I, in particular, and want to know a little bit about what your focus will be in terms of recruitment and retention. Is that going to be covered by this? I mean, I'm curious. I mean, that to me is a critical thing of, it's not just about following the law, it's about getting the best people and the best teachers, because we know teachers are a critical thing, supporting them and retaining the ones we have. So is that going to be an element of this? Is this just a legal review for compliance, or is it actually seeing what our practices are? So,
Thank you.
It could very well be a piece of legal review for compliance, but human resource management work is about impacting student achievement, so you need to take a look at recruitment, induction, retention as being the critical components of recruitment, hiring, induction, and retention to a stable workforce and a productive workforce and a highly effective workforce. So, yeah, we do need to take a look at what are the responsibilities in the district for principals. We know under ed reform, principals have hiring responsibilities with the approval of the superintendent. We need to kind of take a look at the hiring component, the support component, and the research is very, very clear, and I do spend a lot of time on this, an area of passion for me, that the retention piece is perhaps the most critical piece. You have to do your work up front. If you do your work up front and you retain people and you keep this millennial generation and the veterans in your staff supportive, that stability will result, and hopefully has, but will continue to result in stronger student achievement. Take a look at teacher turnover. I don't know what the percentage of teacher turnover is in the district, but we'll take a look at that. Compare that with other like districts. What I do know that in Massachusetts, the data is fairly clear that across the state, for a 4-year period of time from 07 to 011, 30% of the teachers left the profession in the state. In urban areas, and obviously Malden is an urban area with its demographics, but in urban areas it could go as high as 50% across the country. There's a cost to that turnover. There's money that you put into professional development in the first year, second year, third year, etc. When that churn takes place, when that turnover takes place, and it could be true of your leadership turnover too, if you have any leadership turnover, you need to save that money if at all possible. And that's by doing the upfront look at recruitment and hiring and retention, making sure you're hiring the most effective teachers that you can, the most qualified teachers that you can, teachers who have a professional capital, if you will. They have a human capital, they're willing to commit themselves to the social capital work of teaching and learning, and willing to kind of be active members of a professional learning community. So we will take a look at that, guided by the superintendent and the assistant superintendent, and your school leaders, your principals, and give you some feedback on that.
Okay. Now we're going to hear from Ms. DiMaria.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for coming, Mr. Shurtleff. My question is, it seems like it's an awful lot of work for a 4-week window. As I was reading the recap, it's a 4-week timeline that you have. Do you anticipate it to be 4 weeks, or if it goes over, would that affect?
We laid that out as a proposal, understanding that, you know, there's a certain priority to this work. If the superintendent has a set, and the school committee has a set of recommendations, you're better off to have them as you approach your budget process, especially if it impacts any resources that you might need for the following year. It's an aggressive schedule, basically a schedule of interviews which we can accomplish with some discipline. But I think the timing is of essence in terms of giving the superintendent, assistant superintendent, and the school committee some information that may impact decisions they make about the budget process.
Okay, and your budget would remain as it is in our packet?
Yes, yeah,
Okay.
yeah, no, that's our maximum. We're not looking to,
Okay,
yeah.
very
This is
good.
not flexible. I mean, this is not, we're not going to come back with a higher figure. This is the
Okay.
figure that we're proposing. We feel we can do the work with essentially 10 combined days, you know, so,
Thank you.
yep.
Thank you, Ms. DiMaria. Ms. Cabral?
Hi. No? Okay. Hi, Mr. Shurtleff. Thank you for
Good
coming.
evening, thank you.
Just one quick question. Will you be available to the superintendent and the school committee if, after this report has been submitted and we have further questions? And
Very much so, yes. Yep,
Okay.
we will be here to kind of answer questions that you have and give you the answers that you may be looking for. We've not specifically talked about how we're going to present our proposal, other than we'll come up with a report and give it to the superintendent, and we'd be glad to kind of be available to explain, follow up, support. Yep.
thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Cabral. Mr. Waldeck?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Question for Mr. Shurtleff, question for the superintendent, and a comment. But my question for you, thank you for coming tonight.
you.
How many, are you working with other school districts? Are you doing similar studies at this point? Like, I guess, kind of building off Ms. DiMaria's comment about the timetable, are we one of, many clients that are using this, you're working with right now?
We both, Mr. McCallie and I, have the responsibilities that kind of basically outlined. I'm doing some very limited consulting with the district on the Cape. I'm pretty much winding up with that work. I am doing some work with the NEA Foundation that will take me out of the district for a small number of days over the next 2 months. But we're prepared to kind of make a commitment. Obviously, the work that your leaders are doing and your office staff are doing are busy. We want to be able to kind of do it in a both a timely and also in an efficient way. But we're prepared to kind of, our schedule is such that this will be a commitment for us.
Great,
yeah.
thank you.
Right. I would add that Ms. McCallie and I did a similar audit and assessment, but in a shorter time frame for the Brockton Public Schools a year ago, springtime. So we've been through this before together as a team, and we've been doing consulting together in Fall River also. So we kind of are used to working with each other and being efficient in doing that.
Great. I can't imagine the superintendent would have brought you forward if he didn't think very highly of your work. Dr. Drusi, just thinking about recruitment processes, it's, I think, a quick, easy question. We use, the outcome of this audit could involve, recommending that we change the way that we recruit, the way that we go about collecting applications. Just out of curiosity, the AppleTrack system that we use, are we under contract for a long time with them? Is it a year by year?
Superintendent?
It is a year-by-year contract, but I think in terms of recruitment, it's more recruitment and retaining. It's once we get them into the district, what are we doing to ensure that they fit Malden, that they're being trained to meet the challenges in front of them in Malden. So this is a good combination because NESDEC will be coming in also this year, looking at our mentoring programs, our induction programs. There's discussion now in the general public regarding education to say that mentor programs should be 3 years. They should follow teachers right through their non-status years, so that one quick shot of mentoring is not the answer. So I think when AppleTrack is just a vehicle to get the applications. It's a collection. We really, I feel, and I might be wrong, Mr. Winslow, but I think you were gearing more towards the idea of retention and retainment of bodies. What are you doing to make the scholar, that new teacher that just came out of a program, more of a practitioner to fit Malden?
No, that answered my question. I'm glad to see this proposal in front of us. I think I'll echo what Mr. Winslow said. I think at some point or another, we've all sort of discussed that, we feel like this is a need for our district. I've worked in school districts of smaller sizes than ours that have a full-time HR director and staff, which is something that we don't have. So I think that it's timely. I'm glad that you're here now, because I know that we're going to start building the next year's budget soon. And I'm also glad that we had the foresight to budget so much already existent money in this year's budget for consultants' fees. So it's not like this is coming out of something special. We were prepared to do this kind of work. So kudos to the superintendent. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Waldeck. Mr. Iavino?
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And thank you, Mr. Shurtleff, for being here and answering these questions. Under proposed scope of services, it talks about performance evaluations, employee and labor relations. Can you expand upon that just a little, please?
Starting with recruitment, I talked about a wide variety of areas, all the way through communication and coordination. The HR management functions are across that range. An HR director will deal with recruitment and hiring, will deal with employee benefits, will work with legal counsel, will work with school committees, subcommittees, will work with other stakeholders, may very well work with people from the city side, whether it's the city HR person, the city personnel person. Over the years, I've had the benefit of working with some superb legal counsel. I learned an awful lot in my early years as an HR director and still continue to do so. There are things that come up in the work that we do that involve employee discipline, and they're so critical to respond to appropriately and quickly. There are issues that the superintendent, central office staff, and HR director would have to work with legal counsel on in support of a variety of different legal issues. An HR director, as a superintendent, needs to be aware of school law, its impact on employees, needs to have strong employee relations skills, and that's true of all school leaders, you know. So the HR management piece really runs a whole spectrum of the work that we do in schools.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Iovino. Ms. Doucette?
Welcome, and thank you for coming. I'm familiar with HR management. It's a very important part of an institution, especially in schools, to retain teachers. Will you also be assessing the professional development days while you're going through this? Because I know that may tie in with training and coaching. Will you also be looking at what we cover during professional development days?
As I understand it, it was not necessarily our intention to do a drill-down analysis of the professional development offerings of the school district, but I think as it's connected to retention, as it's connected to teaching and learning issues, as it's connected to employee relations, employee morale, as it's seriously connected to student achievement, the topic, I'm sure, will come up. It's not necessarily in our purview to kind of assess the strength or the weaknesses of the entire professional development program. But, you know, as it comes up, as it may come up as a concern, I've worked in the districts that I told you about, and in some districts I was connected directly as an HR director to the professional development work. In other districts, it was more under curriculum and instruction, you know. I've seen it nationally. There is a strong connection to the work that we do around teaching and learning between recruitment, hiring, retention, and professional development, you know. I've started teaching in 1967, and I can probably say that over the years, if there's been one constant outside of change, if there's been one constant, it's been teachers' concern about the strength or the weakness of their professional development program. And it's something that we work at in districts, we work at all the time, we try to improve. And so I think it's kind of a natural area to look at on surface, but it was not our intention to necessarily do a drill down and do down analysis. But to the degree, and Superintendent Rossi and Assistant Superintendent and I will talk more about that if that's what the superintendent would like us to do.
Okay.
Great, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Ms. Doucette. Any other questions from the members? Superintendent, what's your pleasure here?
Well, at this time, I think it's a much-needed part to a redesign and a reorganization and a realignment to see where we are in the world of HR, human resources. So at this time, I would like the school committee to look at this as, you know, a proposal, approve not to exceed the money in front of them, and vote on that this evening.
Okay, there you have the superintendent's request, and I'll entertain any motions by the body. Ms. Doucette makes a motion to adopt, seconded by Ms. Cabral. Now we're back to the discussion stage. Everybody understand where we are? Okay. Motion by Ms. Doucette, seconded by Ms. Cabral. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Anybody opposed? The ayes have it, and that is adopted. Next order of business?
At this time, I would like to call up Assistant Superintendent Dr. Chase to begin with the directors a brief overview of the MCAS results for this year.
Thank you. I was actually waiting for the technology to freeze up, but so far, so good, it's cooperating.
Okay, and while we're doing that, everybody should have a copy of the presentation in your packet. Feel free to step down and watch from the chairs below, or you can watch along at the, up here at the meeting. Ms. Chase.
Several years back, in my last administrative position, when I had to do MCAS presentations, we had just a few tests, and we could crunch the data and do a presentation that could analyze every single test and the performance level of our district versus several others. This is the second time around for me, and this time around there are so many tests and so much data and so much that we can crunch with it that the best way to do the presentation tonight, I felt, was to give a broad overview of what we look like in terms of strengths, weaknesses, and a plan to address any sort of challenges that we're facing at the moment. So the purpose of tonight's presentation is to give a broad brush overview of our MCAS performance this year, to provide a context for MCAS results by presenting you with scores at the 10th grade level from across districts, and then highlighting the strengths of our performance this year, areas of challenges, and then most importantly, plans that we have in place to address some of those challenges and move the district forward. So the best way to proceed is, tonight I have with me several of our directors. I have Ms. Janice Raymond, our Literacy and Title I Director, Dr. Jane Skelton, who will speak to the ELA scores for the upper grade levels, Ms. Marianne Finn for our math scores, and then Dr. Diane Perito for our science scores. Briefly, we are assigned accountability levels, and we are assigned a level of 1 to 5 for each school in the district, with 1 being the highest performing and the lowest performing being a level 5. This year, we're proud that we have 3 schools, the Ferryway, the Linden, and the Salem Wood, who received a level 1 rating. In terms of looking at our scores, it's often good to see what like districts are doing with their scores as well, so that we have some way of benchmarking our performance against that of similar districts. So what I've done is I've culled out the scores that we see for ELA, math, and science at the 10th grade levels. And why I've chosen the 10th grade levels is because the 10th grade is the end game where the scores are counting towards graduation requirements. So all of our students start out at different levels in 3rd grade, different abilities in terms of where they begin for their reading skills, and then progress as they go along throughout the grade levels. And looking at that end game shows us that no matter where they are when they start, here's where they end up in catch-up as the curriculum spirals. So if we take a look at the ELA 10th grade scores, we see that Malden had 85% of its students scoring at proficient or above. The next in line to that would be Revere at 84%, and then the other 2 districts of Chelsea and Everett are a little bit further behind in that. Moving on to our 10th grade scores, if we look at the percentage of students who score proficient or above for 10th grade math, we see that Malden is at 77%, Revere being the second closest at the 75% level, and then Chelsea and Everett again in the 50s. And then finally, if we look at our science scores, we see that for Malden, 66% of our students at the 10th grade level are earning proficient or above, as opposed to 60% in Revere, and scores in the 30s for Chelsea and Everett. So that's a huge overview in 30 seconds of where our district is overall relative to other districts. And now I'd like to turn it over to Janice Raymond, who will speak to our scores for students in grades 3 through 5.
Good evening, everybody. In terms of the third grade, we saw increased students in advanced and proficient on the MCAS ELA this year, and we saw fewer students at failure, which was great to see. In the fourth grade, we had increased percentages at advanced and proficiency, which was also great. If we look at the graph, we can see the distribution over the past 4 years in terms of warning rate, needs improvement, proficiency, and advanced. So we are slowly but surely creeping forward and gaining success. In terms of our challenges, one of our challenges is informing parents, getting parents involved, bringing them to the schools, and being able to address them with so many different languages involved. But we're working on that. We have translators, and more parents are attending functions, information functions at the schools. The other issue we have are our children who are learning a language, simultaneously learning a language as they are learning the rigorous subject areas within each grade level. We're facing new ESL assessments this year. One of our challenges is going to be the 5th grade MCAS. However, across the state, we did not see much success with the 5th grade MCAS. Another challenge we have is we recently found out that they are changing the long write in the 4th and 7th grade. So we have rewritten the pacing guide for writing for the 4th grade so that they will be able to practice the 3 different types of writing that could possibly be on the MCAS, which would be personal narrative, persuasive, or expository. We won't know until March 18th, I think it is. What we're doing in the schools, we're working hard, in fact, rigorously, to make sure that in grades K through 4, we have a 90 or 120-minute literacy block, which is uninterrupted. Uninterrupted means that children are not coming in and out of the classroom. We don't have music in the middle of literacy. We're looking at data, using the DIBELS, the grade unit benchmark test, to make sure that the instruction that the children are getting meets the Common Core. Where teachers are learning to look at student work, it's actually become embedded in the schools, which is great. So we're looking at children, we're talking about work. It's not the door is closed anymore, the door is open, and we're all viewing it. And the schools are having parent-teachers meetings. We're also using the RTI model, which is response to intervention. So we are looking at each child as an individual, not as a group. Twice a year, we sit down with literacy and we create an instructional plan for every single classroom based on individual students and the instruction that they're getting. And Title I, I hope you don't mind, I didn't know exactly what to put in, so I put a cluster of everything. We're working very hard involving parent. We have a list of parent workshops throughout the year on how to help students at home with reading and math, how to alleviate the homework stresses, understanding the assessments we give. We have one on math, technology, and writer's workshop. We also have English classes for parents of students within the Malden Public Schools. They are free to the parents, so that is one more way of getting parents involved. And we have family nights to bring the families together, because we truly believe that one of the biggest means to success is bringing families together with the schools. The next slide is the 5th grade distribution analysis, and you can see it's pretty stagnant, as is the state. The variables we need to consider in research we need to do an MCAS analysis to see where the strengths and weaknesses are of the instruction the children are getting. We need to look at the time allotted for the instruction within each individual grade and classroom. We also need to look at the variables, which children did better. Were the children who had ELA in the morning, did they do better than children that had it in the afternoon? We don't know. We also need to look at how much time children are spending reading across the subject area. Because if they're not reading, they're not going to succeed or excel. So we know that. And we have to make sure that the instruction that the children are getting is aligned with the Common Core. Thank you.
Next, we have Dr. Jane Skelton, who will speak to the ELA scores in grades 6 through 10.
Good evening. Actually, I need these. What we've seen in terms of grade 10, and I will start with grade 10, in the aggregate, we've seen an increase in the number and percentage of students at the advanced level. We moved from 23% to 30%. That's when we look, I always look at the numbers because I know percentages can say one thing. That's 89 students to 118 students. We moved from, at the proficient level, 53% to 55%. And again, that's 204 students to 217 students. And we saw a decrease in the number and percentage of students that needs improvement. Again, you can see it's 18% to 11%, 69 students to 46 students. And we've also had a steady increase in the CPI from 90 to 93, and again, that indexes the number of students moving toward proficient. So the high school has seen a steady increase in students over the last 3 or 4 years if we look at the work, and so we're proud of that work that we're doing. At the grade 6 to 8, all the schools are at either level 1 or 2 at the accountability and assistant level. And I have to say 3 or more schools showed increase at the advanced level when I started looking at grades 8 and grade 6. Schools showed increase at the number of students at the proficient level as well. When I break that down in terms of grade level, grade 6, there is an increase in the median student growth percentile from 55 to 63%. Again, looking at that students' growth toward proficiency, increasing in the percentage of students at advanced level from 9% to 13% at 6th grade. Grade 7, the performance level on the writing prompt is still above the state average, and as you can see, that out of 12, 7.2, the state was 6.92. On conventions, 6.75, state was 6.71. At grade 8, we saw an increase again in the CPI from 89.6 to 91.6. So we're making gains, even though if we look at our scores, we still perform slightly below the state. But when I look at the performance levels, we're moving students forward, either at the proficient or advanced levels. In terms of challenges, and I looked, our main challenge is increasing students' ability to meet the new Common Core standards that require them to make inferences about relationships between details and the overall meaning of text or author's purpose. And I'll talk more about what we're doing to meet those challenges. Analyze and evaluate how the author's choices of organizational, syntactical, and literary choices influence the meaning of the text. And I'm making these statements based on the types of questions our students had to answer on the MCAS this year. Construct and compose strong arguments in their writing about the elements and purpose of different texts and support their position with relevant evidence. And so those are the standards that our students are challenged with facing more and more on the MCAS, more complex text, more complex sentence structure, so that we are working hard to establish stronger 6 to 12 alignment of instructional and assessment practice with the Common Core. This includes professional development on pre-AP strategies that increase students' understanding of author's purpose and rhetorical analysis. More integration of analysis and our use of 2-column notes or dialectical journals during class and during class or whole class discussion, so using those as for writing as well as for discussion. Continued focus on quarterly writing prompts to monitor students' progress in organizing their ideas and writing on demand and writing for different purposes. Creation of a vertical team to align practice across grade levels. In grade 6 to 8, each teacher, English teacher in grade 6 to 8 will be using a sentence composing work text that provides strategies to improve students' reading and writing skills. This work text focuses not only on grammar, but it also focuses on syntax, which is what helps students chunk those more complex sentences into meaningful chunks so that they begin to look at not just the word, but the whole, not just a complete sentence, but how a writer organizes and uses different phrases and clauses to create tone and meaning. So we're providing teachers with more clear support at 6 through 8 to do that work. The teachers at the high school are also continuing that work, and the vertical team will help us establish a more explicit timeline from 6 to 10, especially for those students in terms of assessment and common strategies. I think that's where I'm also going to add that we continue to work with the middle schools in particular, and at the high school, looking at student data, looking at how well our students are doing, looking at our challenges. At the middle school, looking at the grade data and providing intervention and support for students who are still struggling readers. At the high school, we still have a readers workshop for ninth graders who enter still needing additional support for reading and writing. Are there any questions? Okay, thank you.
Okay, moving on and switching gears a little bit, we have Ms. Mary Ann Finn, who represents the curriculum directors in the area of math for the system.
Good evening. I chose to take a little different view when I did the math overview. Besides just proficient in advanced, which obviously is important, to compare that to a previous year, you're not comparing the same students. The children in 4th grade last year are not the ones this year. But there's a new measurement that they use, which is the student growth percentile. And that's longitudinal. So that's taking a group of youngsters who are all at the same level with the same MCORE scores and tracking their progress in their growth. They may not be where you want to be yet, but they're growing. So for the math aggregate all grades, the student growth percentile for the state is 50%. For us, it's 55. And if you look at the 10 comparable districts that the state compares to us, we are the highest, tied with Lowell at 55%. And that's a big accomplishment for a steady progress that we're making towards great success in grade 10. For proficient and advanced students, we are at 51%, and again, that's the third highest for those same 10 comparable districts. The percentage of students who had moved from either needs improvement and or proficient to the advanced level in the district has increased by 10%. And that may not seem like a large number, but 10% of all our kids to now be in advanced is huge. At grade 10 alone, there's 52% who are in advance. So that's quite an accomplishment for the district, and it's systemic. It means that progress had to have been made all along to have reached that number. In the new accountability system, in our waiver to get out of NCLB, they look at you narrowing proficiency gaps, and a very simplistic explanation of that is that to have a CPI that would take you close to 75 would be considered to be on target. And all our grades have a CPI that's above 70. 2 of the grades have a CPI that's above 80. And again, you get a certain number of points for what category you're in. So overall as a district, there's a lot of strengths there for math. The challenges that we face, we still have a percentage in warning and failure it's too high. It's not acceptable. The state still has it, but it's something that we still have to keep in front of us to see how to work with that. As the year goes on, we dig deep into subgroups, grade level, schools, all of that to get a better handle on it, but 19% is a little high for us. The grade 5 growth is below the state average of 50, but grade 5 across the state in both, I believe, ELA and math, were not what they usually are. This seems to be the year that that's the grade where, whether something changed on the test, whether the switch between the other frameworks and the Common Core, no one knows yet what it is, but that was it. Grade 5. Geometry, measurement, number sense, those are the strands that are below the state performance. We are in transition to the Common Core where there are fewer topics and they go much more in depth and it's very vertically aligned. So that's going to come out as we do that implementation anyway. And then inconsistency within grades. We need to work on having the same growth at all schools in that particular grade level. We have a range in a few grades with growth as high as 90 and growth as low as 41 or 42. So we'll work as we dig deep on that. And our next steps, we have entered into a partnership with Revere, Chelsea, Everett, Winthrop, and Malden, and we have had teachers work on creating common curriculum maps, and now they'll start to work on assessments that are directly aligned to the new Common Core. As you know, the new Common Core will lead to the new MCAS known as PARC, and that's really, it's kind of a nice thing to have 5 districts all working on the same thing. Plus, as we transition, there's a lot of kids who move from these 5 districts in and out. You may not be using the same program, but you'll be covering the same topics in the same order and being measured by those assessments. We have partnered with Edutron Corporation, which is Andrew Chen. He will handle professional development workshops and visitations to support just that, the implementation of the Common Core and the PARC assessment. He's already run 2 or 3 workshops over the summer. He just ran an MTEL prep workshop for teachers getting certified in math, grades 1 through 6, and he's been a huge success for the teachers. And lastly, we are in partnership with DSAC, which is District Support and Assistance Centers from the DESE, and that helps us as we target some of these data anomalies and things that are kind of hard to really get your hands around. Dropout rates, graduation cohort rates, because there's such flexibility, and we're going to work closely with them as identifying exactly what it is we need to do to move forward. Thank you.
Moving along, we now have Dr. Diane Perito, who will speak to MCAS scores across the district in the area of science.
All right. I'm actually very happy to be here talking about science MCAS. I looked at this a little bit differently than everyone else. Science is now going to be included in school accountability. So what I wanted to do was take a look at the past, whatever data I could for the past 4 years, and really identify where we are doing well and where we need to improve. So if we look here at our areas of strength, we have been seeing increases in our advanced proficient performance levels and corresponding decreases in needs improvement and failing for the high school level. I'm going to show you a graphic on that in a little bit. We have 3 schools that are following some of the same trends and that you'll see on the high school graphic, and the other schools are pretty much steady, and I'm going to address that in a moment. If we take a look here at the grade 10 science and technology percentages of students by performance level, beautiful curve, and I'm a scientist and I like to take a look at my the curves. If we look here on the far left, we're seeing steady increases in our advanced, and if we look to the far right, we're seeing decreases in our needs improvement. Beautiful. I want to see every grade level look like that. But we've worked very hard at this, because at the high school level, what really pushed teachers to take a look at the data and to analyze it was that now, to graduate high school, they had to pass the biology MCAS. So the teachers for the past couple of years have really taken a look at and analyzed what questions and what type of skills do the students need to get better at those questions. We need to start doing more of that for grade 8 as well as grade 5. Last year with grade 8, we took some time, with the time that I did have with the teachers, looking at the MCAS results, and we need to do more of that. Areas in need of attention, we're seeing level performance for grade 5, and we're seeing fluctuations. If you had to do an average across the 4 years from 2009 to 2012, we're about steady. And now the thing here is, we all know that, or we don't know, is we need to start increasing the focus on science in the elementary grades. My job has been very busy this year. I'm actually having elementary teachers calling me, emailing me, can you please come out and help me? So I love it. So it's a beautiful thing. I've been having grade level meetings with them, looking at what they're currently doing. I had done a survey last June to see what was being taught in every grade level across the district, and there are huge inconsistencies. So we have to take it one step at a time. And that is my third bullet on that last slide, is having consistency across the district. We're faced with new standards coming out in May as well, so that's going to be on the forefront. Actions to be taken, let's take a look at the middle school and the high school. We want to increase the rigor in the classroom through incorporation of laying the foundation lessons. This is something that nearly every middle school and high school science teacher has been involved in, laying the foundation training, professional development, to take a look at their curriculum and see how can we increase the rigor and make our curriculum accessible to all students. Vertical team meetings are taking place this year, so that way from middle school to high school we can really take a look at what is that progression of skills and knowledge that our students need from grades 6 through 12. Professional development on the use of backward design is a big focus at the high school and will be introduced to the middle school as well, to develop lessons that really focus on what are the big ideas and how do we make sure that students know what we need them to know. Actions to be taken in the elementary. I couldn't make it any more simpler. We need more time, more materials, and more training. Increases in frequency and time have occurred this year. New curriculum materials have been ordered. I'm taking it slow. We'll have 3 years once the new frameworks come into play to be in compliance at all grade levels. So introduce one, if you look at grades 1 through 4, right now they're all going to, there's at least one thing that's common across all of them. Next year we'll add a second, then a third. So understanding that the elementary teachers have such high demands on them, I really need to be cognizant of what they're able to do in the time that they have. Looking forward, I already mentioned this, we have new curriculum frameworks coming out, are in place. We have to not only look at the next generation science standards, but they're also incorporating the Massachusetts Common Core standards. What does this look like for science, and how can we get help our teachers understand that? This isn't mine. Yeah.
But you did a nice job.
All right, there we go. I'll just finish a few.
So thank you to all of our directors who are here tonight to go over this and answer any questions that you have. Diane was doing a nice job with the first bullet on this slide, that overall we have to look forward because we're straddling two worlds right now. So at the same time we're looking at MCAS scores, and then over the next several months drilling down with teachers to look at the performance in certain areas and how well our students do and how we can move them to the next level. We also have a foot in the world of the Common Core standards. So trying to balance the two of those and look ahead with that. The PPI, which is Progress and Performance Index, Mary Ann Finn has spoken to earlier. And that's taking a look at student performance in a slightly different way, which is combining information about narrowing the proficiency gaps that we might see, and looking at that in terms of student growth, along with graduation and dropout rates over multiple years, and then combining that into a single number that compares our performance against others. And then looking at ELL framework standards, we are under lots of mandates from the state in terms of what we need to provide teachers this year with professional development. One of those focus areas has to do with the way we teach in a classroom where we have an ELL population and providing them access to academic language, which would benefit all of our students. And finally, we're making this transition from the MCAS test to the PARCC exams, which are exams related to readiness for college and career. So those will be adjustments that are being made over the next couple of years. So that's our overview. If there are questions, the directors aren't running out right now. They'll entertain questions that you have.
Okay, thank you, Assistant Superintendent Chase. And before we get to questions, let me make one observation. That is, nice presentation. Thank you to you and the directors, and let me also state that I thought overall, I thought the scores looked good, and so let me also compliment the superintendent, you, the directors, and everyone else involved. So with that being said, let's take some questions from the members. We're going to go first to Mr. Froyo.
First of all, I'd like to say there was a terrific job by all of you. Ms. Perito, I just want to have one question. On technology, you talk about inconsistencies across the school system. I think Ferryway is the only school that has a technology shop or program. Is there any chance that we can expand that eventually to the other middle schools?
I would like that to happen.
Okay, let's get to the microphone. Okay, go ahead.
I would like that to happen. I'm not sure what that, I know that there are plans in place, and I'm not part of that, but that's something that needs to be addressed in terms of the technology. If you take a look at, at the middle school at least, grade 6 through 8, there is technology. When I talked about that laying the foundation, many of the activities in the lessons incorporate some technology, not quite the same as you're thinking of at the Ferryway, but we're looking at handheld devices for measurement. So we've got, it's like mini computers for measuring temperature and motion and so forth. And every school in the district has that technology through funding from the Race to the Top funds.
Now, looking at the scores at the Ferryway, do they show any advance over the other schools by having that technology program?
Yes.
They do?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Froyo. Other questions, left to right? Okay, we'll swing right. Any questions of the members? We'll go Mr. Winslow, and then we'll go Mr. Weldy.
I mean, Salem Wood and Ferryway, came out as level 1. Can you explain a little bit, what do you think of the impact of the extended day on that? Thanks.
Mr. Chase?
That's something that we would have to look into, and surely it could have an impact on that. We'd have to drill down a little bit more. Those schools do have the extended day program, and we'd have to see how much time is devoted per subject area, and look at an item analysis, grade level by grade level, to see where their strengths are, and then to look at it to see if it's programming that is built into all schools, and it just so happens that the numbers go one way here, or if it has to do with the extended day piece of it. But you could drill down with an item analysis in the future for that.
Okay, good question, Mr. Winslow. Mr. Weldy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Dr. Chase. Just a couple of things. One, sort of piggybacking off of what Mr. Winslow just said, I think the scores look great. They look absolutely great. I think we're doing wonderful things in our district, and it's showing. But we didn't make any mention throughout the presentation to actually what level we are as a district as a whole. And I think that should be talked about a little bit tonight, as well as sort of why we're at that level and what subgroups, et cetera. And I think also, as one member, I would have liked to have seen, on top of this, sort of a school-by-school breakdown. I think what we're really missing is, this was wonderful, seeing the departmental breakdown, but I think it would have been nice to have seen a breakdown between the 6 schools. I think that would be something that would be very beneficial maybe at our next meeting, because I think that also will show us a lot of where we are and where we need to be going. But could you talk a little bit about that for a minute?
Sure. In terms of the breakdown school by school, if you want to let me know exactly what kind of data you'd like to see, if it's a particular subject area or if it's a particular way you want to see that broken down, that can easily be done. Secondly, to speak to the levels of the other schools, we mentioned that the Ferryway, the Linden, and the Salem Wood are at level 1 status. Our other elementary schools are at level 2 status. The ELC is not given a status because there's no testing, and the high school is given a level 3 status. The reason why our district is termed a level 3 district is because you can only receive a level for the district as high as your lowest performing school. It's a catch-22 at the high school level. The reason why they're being termed a level 3 school has to do with graduation rates for certain populations of students. One of the things that the high school does well is they go after students that typically would take a longer time to graduate, looking at the bigger picture and understanding that we want all of our students to have this opportunity at a shot at graduation. So with that comes the way that we count those students. If we bring them back, do they finish or do they stop again and then start? And each time they stop and start, it's a knock against us. So it's a casualty of trying to do the right thing and looking at the bigger picture.
I think that's a very important piece that needed to be said, on your half tonight. Mostly because, I think when we get questions, all of us, and when people see results and they see data, I think it's very easy for someone to not really understand why we were given a level 3 as a district. I think that point was an important one, especially where we see so many schools making such great strides. I'm looking at Carol Keenan, thinking of the Salemwood scores. We have a lot of schools making great strides, and I think it's important for the public to know that it's not, it's the reason that you explained. So I think that's an important point to make.
And then going back, if you look at those 10th grade scores, when we compare ourselves to other districts, we're coming out on top on that as well. So it's just the way you want to look at the angle of the data. So,
yeah. Couple quick questions. One was, and I believe this was Ms. Raymond who was talking about this. We talked a little bit about the challenges reaching families and so many different languages. And do you feel as if our translation services are up to par? Is that something where you think that we can improve as a district, or do you think we're doing okay in terms of the translation services?
I'm going to have Janice speak to that, because Janice has held a lot of parent meetings this year already and has translation services available. So
that would be great.
We're doing a good job. It's still a work in progress. There are so many different languages within the city. It's hard to keep up with them. We do have translators for the most popular languages, which are Portuguese, Spanish, Chinese, French Creole, and English. It would be nice that we had a family function just last week, and someone had asked for the parent involvement in Vietnamese, and we don't have that. So it's just a work in progress. There's only so many languages and so many people you can hire, but it is difficult to keep up with them. There are computer programs that automatically translate, but they don't always translate as well as we would like them to.
Yeah.
They may translate so that people know the dates of things and the times, but it may not give the message as clearly as we'd like it to.
No, I think that's a good point. I'll sort of direct this one at the superintendent, and I think that was an amazing point. I can't believe we don't have a Vietnamese translator. I think what would be nice is if maybe sometime before the next meeting, if you were able to get the school committee sort of a list of the languages that we do have available in terms of translation services, and then maybe in talking with the directors and principals, I would suppose too, seeing which ones that we're lacking and where we can kind of shore that up, because I think it's a no-brainer. It's essential. I mean, we need to be able to speak to the parents.
Right. When we have a family breakfast, which we've had 5 of them so far, I do mention the fact that if you are interested, if you speak a second language and you'd like to be a translator, to call City Hall. It's one way to reach out, and it makes parents feel helpful, but it's really up to the parent to make that initiative.
That's true. Thank you. The only other comments that I made, and I'll commend you too while you're walking away, you both, and Pat Fish and Paul McCarthy, for the work that you do with the parent workshops. I think that's a great thing, and you're seeing a lot of participation, and you're getting parents who don't normally come out to events. I've been to a lot of them, and they're very well attended, and that's incredibly impressive. One of the things that I heard and I saw going through this entire thing, this entire presentation for Dr. Chase, was that you see a consistent theme of the need to have those vertically aligned teams within the content areas. I think that we as a school committee pressed the need for an aligned curriculum, and that sort of was the basis for the whole NESDAQ realignment, reorganization study in the first place. So to see that being emphasized, it's good that each and every director has that emphasized on their action steps, because it's incredibly important not only to have the aligned curriculum grade, within the grade itself, but also to see the transition where you're going. So it was nice to see that sort of translated, that we're all on the same page there together. The only other questions that I had. and I think, Dr. Chase, you could probably answer this. Ms. Raymond made mention of, in terms of what schools are doing, the frequency. I was curious about the frequency of grade level meetings at the elementary school. Are there any elementary schools that are currently not at daily? Well, I'll rephrase that. Or how do you know offhand, and maybe this is something you could bring back to us, the frequency of grade level meetings specifically at the elementary schools?
I'd rather get back to you on that and have it accurate as opposed to taking a guess.
No, that would be great if you could, yeah, to follow up. The other point that I noticed was with Ms. Finn, when we were talking about the next steps for the math department. Just curious in terms of the MTEL workshops for the teachers' math certification 1 to 6, if that's something that we're putting on the teachers to pay for, or if that's something that we as a district are helping to subsidize.
Both.
Good.
No. It's math content knowledge that we're stressing for the elementary, and this last workshop that we ran around the MTEL, Edutron paid for the entry or the registration fee for the MTEL test. We're hoping to roll this out farther and farther as more and more teachers get interested. I think it would be wonderful if we could, but I don't know that we're at a point yet where we can say we're going to guarantee it, but we are certainly working in that direction.
No, that's great, because
Okay.
it serves as almost a professional development piece as well.
Absolutely.
We should be able to help subsidize those costs.
Absolutely.
Dr. Perito, when she was talking, made mention to, oh, you're okay.
Oh.
Dr. Perito, when she was talking to, made mention, I think this is my last point, of the increased use of the directors with the elementary schools. And I think that's sort of an important thing to realize too, because we also have talked a lot about the idea of an administrative reorganization. We've talked a lot about this NESDAQ thing in the first place. And I think it's important that part of what the NESDAQ study does, and I hope it does, is really examine how effectively the directors are being used at the elementary level, because they are K through 12 directors, and I think that we see specifically probably science and social studies the ones that are least utilized at the elementary level, and I'm sure that math and English get utilized at the elementary level, but I think that's something that I hope that the NESDAQ study looks at, because Dr. Perito made mention of it. I'm sure she's getting more and more hits from elementary teachers lately, but I think that's something with K to 12 directors, we do want to make sure that we're utilizing them as best we can, because it's one person, and there's only so much one person can do. But that's the extent of it. So thank you so much for the presentation. It was wonderful. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Weldy. Ms. DiMaria.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to express my appreciation to all the directors. It was a great think tank, and I know you all work very hard on it, and we all appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. DiMaria. Any other questions? If I might, just a couple from the chair, Ms. Chase. First, is this presentation on the school department's website?
No, not yet, but we can
Okay.
post it.
All right, and would you post that just centrally or each school's webpage?
It can be done both. It can be
Okay.
done on a general page and then also on each school's webpage.
Okay, and then following up on Mr. Weldy's question, would you also post the school data applicable to each school on their website? So for instance, the Forestdale School, their scores, and on the way down the road?
There are links to the DOE's website that gives a breakdown of school by school, grade by grade, so we can make that available and then maybe put it in a more user-friendly format if someone just wanted to look at it at a glance without getting into the nitty-gritty of every little.
Yeah, I'm not speaking for everybody. I think that's what I would prefer. I think that's the one that made sense. I think the superintendent had distributed a one-pager before that summarized the subgroups and
Okay.
the overall score of the school. I think that would be useful for, the school community. If that's possible, when do you think we could get that information posted?
This week, we can get it
Great.
posted.
Now, on your third slide where it says the district overview,
Yes.
you have 3 schools that are level 1.
Yes.
How do you stay there? Isn't that the hard part now? Because my understanding is you have to grow at a certain percentage each year to stay at a level 1. Could you just briefly touch upon that so the members are aware of what's in front of
Sure.
us?
So the state is looking for you always to improve.
Right.
One of the things that we have in place that works in our favor is the new evaluation system.
Okay.
So with the new evaluation system, teachers are making two goals. One is professional practice, but then the second has to do with student growth. So whether that has to do with improving their math scores or improving their reading or taking them from understanding how to write a paragraph to how to make that paragraph into a 5-paragraph essay, that growth will definitely impact the performance over time. So teachers are constantly having to collect data that will support their progress to meeting those two goals, but at the same time, there are pretty extensive rubrics that look at 4 different categories, 16 subcategories, and 32 smaller elements of professional practice that have to do with teaching, learning, and assessment. So our administrators, when they do evaluations, will be looking to converse with teachers about what their progress is in each of those 32 elements over a period of time. So that's going to be the biggest piece that can move us forward to make sure that our individual teacher goals, but also our team goals and school goals add up so that we do see that improvement over time.
Okay. And staying along with that theme, could you also explain for the committee, Malden High School, in my opinion, they are not a level 3, but I thought because of one statistic, that dropped them to a level 3. I thought it had something to do with the dropout rate from 3 years ago.
Yes, and that goes back to the statement that I made with when you're pulling students back in to ensure the bigger
Right.
picture of them getting that education. We have met with DSAC recently. They will be coming in to do a broad overview and then drilling down to see, is it a technical piece that we might be terming our students in a certain way that goes against us, or is it something that's instructional? And so we'll be working with them over the coming months to ensure that that level 3 moves up.
Okay. Great. Thank you very much
Thank
once
you.
again. Any other questions before we move forward? Superintendent, you want to lead us out?
Absolutely. Overall, again, I think this district has been and will continue to work hard. I had the opportunity last week as part of the evaluation system on my own, meeting with principals reviewing their SMART goals individually. Each principal that walked through my office, we already began to talk about next year, how to maintain the level 1 status. Meeting with the high school principal, we talked about DSAC coming in. He's more than open and ready for that to help him look at his dropout, what's going on there. I've had discussions with the Forestdale principal. She'll put together a report for Dr. Chase and I. We'll begin to look at what's going on really at the ground level of each building. So the discussions are open. I will say that the 3 level 1s have worked hard. Salem Wood, I've said this in public and in numerous places, right here at the school committee. Salem Wood just really buckled down, did some hard work. They looked internally, they did what they had to do, and they pushed themselves up. And I believe one of the comments, as I see Ms. Keenan out there, as we were leaving after our meeting, it says, okay, how are we going to maintain this next year? So she's geared up. I think everybody's working hard. You have some great administrators, both through the directors' ranks as well as principals. They're focused, they know what they need to do. One director that's missing today is Jen McCabe, our ELL director. Jen was involved in an accident earlier last week. She was literally hit by a bus, believe it or not, crossing the street on her way back to, I think she was going to the high school. She is fine. She is doing well, but she's pretty banged up, and we wish her a quick recovery, and we've been in contact. So she's already doing some great work with ELL, and I expect to see those numbers. And we also have some very interesting programs through the Gateway Grant that if we can get them funded will absolutely boost our ELL success in the future.
Okay, great. Thank you, Superintendent. Once again, thank you, Assistant Superintendent Chase and the directors assembled here this evening. So now we're going to continue on with the superintendent's report. The next 6 items we're going to go over is accomplishments, educator evaluation tool update, budget updates, subcommittee updates, contracts, and contract negotiations. Superintendent DeRusi.
And I will do my best to hit this hard and fast. Accomplishments, one of the biggest was Malden High School coming out of their NEASC accreditation visit. There is I can't tell you the amount of work that goes into the self-study the year before and how much a high school has to go through to get ready for that visit, which basically will allow a high school to maintain its accreditation for the next 10 years. I had the opportunity to be there at the opening ceremony on the Sunday night. We met as a group with the visiting team, and then Dr. Chase and I had the chance to meet with the two chairs. At the end on Wednesday, basically very impressed. The chair made it very clear that they were impressed with the instruction, the level of instruction happening at the high school, that they were impressed with the student body. And I've always said the students in Malden make the difference. That's the student body at the high school. They show up every day. They're serious about what they need to do. They still can have fun as high school students, but they're working hard and they're doing the right thing. So overall, now the next step is the accreditation committee. There was 17 strong. It was a pretty big committee. Will give us a full-blown report. Expect, and I say this to the school committee, I've also started I've started my PTO tours where I present at different buildings. I'm at the Salem Wood tomorrow night. I'm talking to the parents about things like accreditation. I'm talking to them about things like park exams. Because when we shift, expect a dip. It happens. New exams will create a slight student dip, just like it would if I was always being trained to take the same curriculum. So with the accreditation, you will get recommendations. It's what they do. So they will highlight the good, and they will make recommendations on any areas of weakness. So I'm bracing people. The key is getting the accreditation back for another 10 years, which I was told on the way out by the team. There's no reason to worry about that. So it was a good visit. I have mentioned the Salem Wood again real quick, that on October 22nd, the governor will be back in Malden, second time in less than a year, to not only award a Malden school with a grant and an opportunity to advance themselves, but also to use it as staging for his press conference. Athletic Director Dan Keefe, in partnership with Carol Keenan, principal at the Salem Wood, at like literally 2 weeks, pulled together a grant opportunity through the National Foundation for Governor's Fitness. And this was right, I believe, Carol, I'm looking at her, it was somewhere right near the end of the summer, I believe. And they jumped on it, they banged it out fast. And lo and behold, we got a call, I think 10 days ago, that Salem Wood was picked. They will come in through this grant and build a state-of-the-art fitness room. It's amazing. I saw the equipment, state-of-the-art cardiovascular exercise equipment, and it will be open for both students and adults. So on October 22nd, we will have the governor and his entourage back in Malden, which is always nice. Time to be announced right now. We're still, nope, Carol has some. If I could ask.
The entire school committee obviously is invited. The ceremony itself is 11:30 to 12:30.
And I want to thank Ms. Keenan because she is in constant contact. It's not an easy event, and I think Mayor Christensen could attest to the amount of things you have to get ready for such a visit. And she has been there. Hats off to Steve Melanson. He's been working in the room. There had to be some adjustments in painting and removing of shelving, and so everybody's pulled together. And Ms. Keenan, if you send me that in an email, I'll make sure it gets out to everybody tomorrow. All right, the educator evaluation tool, this update, I am so proud of this district right now when it comes to this educator evaluation tool and the implementation. We hustled last year, over 45 hours of impact bargaining to get it ratified. My administrators went into training on this even in December before we started the impact bargaining. We decided, and I give Dr. Chase credit. She's good at putting the fine details to the big picture. I knew I wanted to roll this out and implement this, not by bringing in experts to do this, but to cultivate the experts in the district, because that's how you build capacity. So we do have an outside expert working with my administrators to help them learn to evaluate in this model. But then what we started to do was build our own professional development and begin to present it. So I was trained, the administrators were trained in SMART goals, so the directors, Dr. Chase and myself, on our first professional development day had the opportunity to go work with a school and teach teachers how to do this. The second wave, through a Title IIA grant, we decided, let's train teachers, 2 teachers per building, to know how to implement this. Why? Because you're developing a resident team of experts in every building. So when you talk to induction programs, when you talk to new teachers, when you talk about, well, I have questions, who do I go to? We want this in the end of this 2-year implementation cycle to have the resident experts in the buildings, trained, confident, from the principals to the directors to the teachers, so that we don't have to worry in the future, how are we going to keep this alive and how do we do it? So we have worked hard. We are absolutely ahead of the state. There are districts, some of our neighboring districts, that haven't even put this into impact bargaining yet. Negotiations have stalled. Hats off to this district for getting this done last year, putting all that heavy work behind us and really moving forward. I am totally proud of where we are right now in the implementation process. Budget update. We are ready. November 1st, we'll begin to look at FY14. And that's in part due to having the school budget as tight as it could possibly be. I meet weekly with a cabinet that consists of Dr. Chase, Maura Johnson, my Director of Special Ed and Pupil Personnel, and Tony Mertz, my Acting Business Manager. Directors come to us. We have a handle on the money. We know what we're spending. And we have been able to, even in lieu of a $1.5 million budget cut, begin to spend wiser, spend smarter, and be able to implement some of the smaller programs that we lost. And again, credit to a district that is going through this change where you may still get, but there are structures to go through in order to get what you need. And there's almost a defense to why I need $25,000. First question I'm going to say is, can we do it for 10? And usually after about 40 or 50 minutes, we get it for 15. So we're working well here. We're learning. I know the budget subs will speak to the subcommittee meetings, but we had a few since our last meeting. The negotiation subcommittee opened talks with the clerks union. The redesign committee met to approve moving forward with NESDEC. And I know that the superintendent evaluation subcommittee met for a training conducted by an MASC rep on the implementation of the evaluation tool. Now, every member has my self-reflection, which was a piece of that. The 3 members received a binder with my self-reflection and then evidence collected. Now, they have the tough job. As one of the subcommittee members said, this is a lot of work, this is confusing. I smiled at that person and said, imagine implementing this in a district. So I sympathize with what they're trying to do for one person, because as a district, we're trying to do this across the board for all of us. So I appreciate their hard work, and they have a couple of meetings set up, and at some point, they'll call me back in. I'm hoping that my self-reflection, evidence that I've gathered, will show you that what I said I set out to do, I've done my best to meet those benchmarks. With contracts, I don't have anything to report except we've started. I believe we're going into executive session at some point this evening to discuss the clerk's contract and the negotiations. I do know that Marguerite, the union president, is beginning to talk to her body to begin to define roles and responsibilities, because one thing that the chair did ask of us in a meeting was to start, he wants contract languages cleaned up, brought up to date, and that's the goal throughout this negotiation. Last, I would just like, and I have a meeting with principals tomorrow, but Senator Clark has asked me once again to mention her Cradles to Crayons. It's a nonprofit organization to provide new and gently used clothing and other essential items to children in need in Massachusetts. So I'll share that with the principals tomorrow. I'll send it out to the PTO groups also, and I assured Senator Clark that we would be supportive in this endeavor. And I believe that's it.
Okay, thank you, Superintendent. Questions of our school superintendent? Okay, we'll move on to the next order of business, which is item 4, subcommittee reports. There are 3 of them. The first one is policies and procedures, which will be led by Mr. Winslow.
Yeah, we did meet on September 17th to discuss the various matters that are referred to the Michael's Law, which covers emergency plans. We talked about the modifying controlled choice for school assignments and some other MSC policy updates that are proposed. So we have another meeting scheduled for a week from tonight on the 22nd. So we'll be covering those same topics. And we are looking for one of the directors to come to talk about the assignment policy from the PIC. So that's what we'll be discussing. So we're moving forward on those things. So.
Okay, Mr. Winslow, once again, that meeting is October 22nd at 5 p.m. in the first floor central office.
Central office, first floor, yep.
Great. All right, any questions of Chairman Winslow? Okay, hearing none. The next item under subcommittee reports is negotiations subcommittee. Mr. Weldy.
I'm going to pass because the superintendent mentioned that we are beginning negotiations with the Secretaries Union and kind of provided a little bit of an update of what Marguerite is doing on her end with the teachers. So thank you, Dr. Drusi. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Weldy. Any questions of Mr. Weldy? Hearing none. Next order of business, Superintendent Evaluation Subcommittee meeting. Mr. Winslow.
Yeah, the Superintendent Evaluation Committee met on October 1st for a training that was put on by our former colleague and now counselor Steve Altrino, who gave us a very extensive update on the manuals and guidance that have been provided by the MSAC on evaluating superintendents, which it's a very extensive process. And, you know, that's one of the reasons why we're having two meetings possibly this week is really to look at, I think there's 64 rubrics we could go through, and not only do you develop what sort of criteria you would evaluate the superintendent on, but you want to gather data about that. So it's we really have to sort out. We had made sort of progress on developing some a template for sort of year one, last school year, and we were starting to work on year two, but now we have this new information. We sort of have to process that and figure out how that fits in with making it a model that works for our schools and is helping us to further our, efforts to, improve the schools. So we have to kind of digest this big bulk of information that we got, so it is a little bit overwhelming. So that's why we'll be meeting on Wednesday, and then perhaps on Saturday if we don't make enough progress on Wednesday. But it's we do expect after sort of developing some of these templates, we'll bring those back to the committee. Also expect that that's just the start of the process, is really developing the templates after discussion with the superintendent. Then you actually have some process of going through the superintendent's self-evaluation, perhaps engaging parents and staff in some focus groups and that type of thing to have the committees do a little bit of independent investigation. So, it is a process, and we do want to kind of get to the point quickly enough to have the templates there, so that we can actually get into the meat of the evaluation process, so we can sort of evaluate last year's progress and sort of be in a position to do an interim progress report for this year, so get on track for it. But I think that Superintendent Tarusi's been doing a great job of taking it very seriously, getting his goals together, and that's really what we want to make sure that this tool is something it makes progress and not just an exercise that we're going through, but is helping us to become a better district. So, thanks.
Great. And Mr. Winslow, just to make sure, so it's Wednesday, 5 p.m. in the central office?
Yes, correct. And then Saturday could possibly be at 2 o'clock at the Malden Public Library if we have that meeting. So we'll let people know. Great. By Thursday. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Winslow. Any questions of Mr. Winslow? Hearing none. Next order of business is item 5, deliberations. 2 items. First one, update on distribution of school handbooks and email address requests. Ms. DiMaria and Superintendent DeRusi. We'll start with Ms. DiMaria.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think the update would come from the superintendent.
Okay,
you.
Superintendent DeRusi?
Yes, I believe that with the idea of, if I'm correct, we were trying to look more towards electronic or not giving handbooks out to every member of every family. When I dug deeper into that, there seems to be a feeling in the community that everybody wants a handbook, unfortunately. So it's one of those things where they're not ready to go electronic. You give one to the freshman who might bring it home versus the kindergartner that is definitely in the backpack. I think that's something that right now it seems that most people would like to have that handbook in hard copy, and maybe that's something we can begin to move more towards in the future, getting them posted earlier out there on the websites and so on. The email address request is not a problem. I was told that they are monitored and updated regularly by schools, but I think we need to make it more of a priority now that we're in the age of multimedia and multi-approaches. It does fit into another committee that I'm sitting on now, which is at the city level, a full-blown emergency team, where we're talking about updating our databases constantly, regularly, so that Code Red interacts with ConnectEd, which interacts with another piece, and we do have the ability for Code Red to pull and access data out of ConnectEd. So I see in the future, very near, hopefully knock on wood, not too often, but a snow day would not be a ConnectEd from the superintendent, but could go out as a Code Red and hit my teachers, paras, wherever they are, it would be a Code Red, so that because that decision really is made at a round table of emergency city people, myself included, that get together. So a Code Red would go out to parents, teachers, which would then allow me to go in and do the follow-up with the television news agencies. So we are still working on that. It is current, it's evolving, and I think we'll get better at it as time goes on.
Okay, thank you, Superintendent. Questions of the Superintendent or Ms. DiMaria? Mr. Waldeck.
More a comment. I can understand the desire to have the paper copy of the handbook, but I don't think it's necessarily on us to abide by what people sort of feel like they might want, because we all know that you take the handbook home, then you toss it somewhere, and you never look at it again. So I think it's on us to make that change. I think we need to take a positive step to do that, whether anyone else is ready for it or not. I think our handbook's already posted online. I think from now on, we look at just sending home a sheet of paper, one single sheet of paper that says the handbook is posted online. Please read and acknowledge that you read it, take a look at it. I think that's on us. I don't think we need necessarily to do the public opinion surveys and things like that. I think we just do it. It's a positive step in the right direction, so I commend you both for looking at it. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Ms. DiMaria?
Thank you. Actually, with all due respect, the last meeting was not asking for an electronic handbook, but it was to consolidate the hard copies of the handbooks that are distributed into one family member. So I commend you for the next step, but at this step, I understand everyone wants a copy, but to send out 4 handbooks at 80 pages a handbook to one family seems like a very terrible waste of time and money, so.
All right, thank you, Ms. DiMaria. Superintendent DeRusi?
I did ask that question, not only of my office secretaries who field a ton of calls, but with a variety of principals, that parents will still call and want that additional handbook. We're sending them back, more than one. So if I, maybe I listened to Mr. Weldy, and he's saying just make it a policy to go electronic, or maybe the first step is consolidate and we're only sending one home. I think, again, if you leave it to public opinion, you're going to run into some that like it, some that don't, some that want to stay the same, some that want to change it. If you're ready to make that change as a school committee, then I just need enough notice so that we can begin to put that information out so the parents know it's coming and they'll be more willing to accept it.
Okay, other questions? Ms. Doucette?
Thank you. I think it's a good thing to make it an handbook and send one sheet home, but the problem is, what if households don't have internet? That'd be my only concern. It's great to go green, but what if they don't have the access to the internet? What would happen there?
Okay. Any other comments, questions? Go ahead, Mr. Welder.
And I understand that. I think, basing off what the superintendent said, I think if we have parents who are getting one handbook and then calling and saying they need a second handbook, I mean, that's terrifying. I think that's reason enough to go ahead and push forward with putting them online. I would feel as one member that this is something that we can refer to policy and see if we can get some sort of a solid policy in place, even if it involves not offering the handbooks unless people request a hard copy of the handbook. I mean, then you might actually get a better read. You might be sending out 10% of the handbooks that people actually have to ask to look at it. So I think I'd like to make a motion to refer this to policy after discussion's over.
Okay, poor policy subcommittee. If I might, from the chair, or Mr. Casucci, do you want to speak on this?
Yes, I think the e-solution is a great solution. We're all used to that today, and maybe a small cost. If you wanted the printed copy, $1 or $2. And, if I think maybe that might be an option for looking into the future and see, then someone might not want 4 copies if they're $2 a piece.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Casucci. Anybody else? If I might, from the chair, I wholeheartedly agree with Mr. Weldy on his position. I think some of the other people that spoke, I think there is a reasonable compromise somewhere that I think, led by Mr. Winslow, will be able to find it. I know for us upstairs on the electronic newsletters that we send out to the residents, we go under the assumption that they have internet. If they don't, then we mail them a copy. So, I think something like an opt-in or, we're going to go this direction for those that don't have access to a computer or are steadfast that they do indeed need 2, 3 copies, then we'll mail them. But I think if we, go down the path that Mr. Weldy is talking about, I think we'll get to where we all want to go. So, Mr. Weldy, you made a motion. It was seconded by Ms. Cabral. So this is to refer to see if Mr. Winslow and his team can craft something that would be amenable to the committee. Is everybody okay with that? Any other discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye. Anybody opposed? The ayes have it, and that matter is referred to the policy subcommittee. The second item under deliberations is called Safety in High School. Ms. Doucette.
Thank you, Mr. Chairperson. The reason why I brought up the issue with safety in high school was in light of the incident that happened last month on Eastern Avenue. The superintendent acted quickly and diligently and locked down all the schools, and I was just concerned that Malden High had their doors open all the time, but I'd be glad to report to all of you that they are safely shut, they're tucked away, they're nice and happy, and no one will get in there unless they're fine. They're fine. So that's all I have to report. They're fine.
Okay. Any questions of Ms. Doucette? Okay, hearing none. Thank you, Ms. Doucette. We'll move on to consent agenda. This is item 6 on the docket. And there are 4 items here. The first one is the MASC conference delegate vote. Mr. Weldy.
The MASC conference is coming up the second week of, or the first and second middle there, week of November. For the past 2 or 3 years, I've been fortunate enough to serve as Malden's representative to the MASC. And this year I'll still be there since I'm an officer of our division of MASC, the urban division. But I'm going to request to not be the official voting delegate for the Malden, or for the city of Malden, so that way we can have even more representation at the conference. So I would like, unless there's further discussion about the actual conference and the delegates, I would like to make a motion to nominate Ms. Cabral to be Malden's delegate to the Mass Association of School Committees.
Okay, is there a second? Seconded by Mr. Winslow. Discussion. Everybody clear on Mr. Weldy's proposal? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? The ayes have it. Ms. Cabral, congratulations,
Congratulations.
I think.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, so the next order of business is change of professional title for Ann O'Connell Hannafin. Superintendent DeRusi.
Yes. When I first came to the district, I questioned why Ann was only a director of the ELC when she performs all duties that above and beyond what directors do. She has all the certification required, and as many of you know, Ann is retiring this year. And I think I would ask the school committee, there would be no change to anything but a job title right now, to grant her to retire as the principal with that title of the ELC, as opposed to director of ELC. And as we move forward, thinking to replace somebody as valuable as Ann, and let me tell you, Ann does everything there, no assistant to help her. Her evals are on time, she evaluates teachers, paraprofessionals. I've been over there in the summer where she has a bucket of paint in her hand and she is helping the custodians paint. So I think this is a woman that I would like to see go out with the title of principal, and then that'll also create the opportunity for us to post that position to replace as a principal of the ELC.
Questions of Superintendent DeRusi. Ms. Cabral.
With the change in the title, is there any money, salary?
She is asking for no salary change. She is just asking for a change in title.
Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Cabral, thank you. Anybody else have a question to my left? Anybody else to the right? Along the lines of what Ms. Cabral was asking, out-year superintendent, Ms. Hannafin retires. This is posted as a principal's position moving forward. What impact does that have, if any, cost-wise?
Again, I would look at the size of the building, the going rate of other principals in the district, and I would post it as a principal. Ann is, right now, as a director, probably making, give or take, $10,000 less than what a principal may be making.
Mm-hmm.
And I would have been to the committee anyway to say that that position needs more than a director's title on it right now. You were fortunate to have the quality that you had in Ann Hannafin, but in the future, with the growing demands of early literacy and the needs of the children that we are servicing in that district, I'll be back. As I said, I'm looking at my FY14 budget November 1st, so we would build in a principal position and pay for that.
Okay, everybody clear on that? Okay, so we need a motion, I guess. Motion by Mr. Kasucci, seconded by Ms. Doucette. Everybody clear? Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Anybody opposed? The ayes have it. The proposal is adopted. Item number 3 under consent agenda is change of retirement date for Nancy Kasabian. Mr. Iavino.
Each of you have in your packet a letter that I wrote on behalf of Mrs. Kasabian. As you know, Nancy retired this past June after 22 years of service in Malden. And when she submitted her letter for retirement, she made an error. And the error was that it should have been dated July 1, 2012, as opposed to June 30th, 2012. Her official date with the state of Massachusetts and all benefits that accrue to her with the state of Massachusetts are July 1. So I would simply ask this committee to grant a change of retirement date for Mrs. Kasabian to read July 1, 2012, as opposed to June 30th, 2012. That one-day omission, it possibly puts in jeopardy 17 vacation days that she is owed. So I think that she has more than earned that after 22 years in the system, and I would ask the members of the committee to grant that. Thank you.
Okay, questions of Mr. Iavino? Ms. Cabral.
Okay, it's more of a comment. I don't have a question. I understand Mrs. Kasabian has done a lot of work for Malden. I unfortunately, on principle alone, I can't vote for this. We're experiencing a tight budget. We need to set a precedent. And, this is not a reflection of her work and what she's done for Malden Public Schools. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Cabral. Mr. Weldy.
Just a comment. I am going to support this, but thank goodness we had an HR solutions proposal tonight. Stuff like this can be avoided in the future.
If we could, are you all set,
Yeah.
Mr. Weldy? Okay, let's let Mr. Iavino, Mr. Foyer, you want to go first, and then we'll have Mr. Iavino respond?
All I want to say is that I approve of this. You can say that it's not for what she's done, but she's been here day and night over the last, I don't know how many years she was assistant superintendent, but, I mean, how can we do that to an employee? We want to keep people here. They see things like this happening, they're not going to stay here. That's all I have to say.
Well, in due deference to Ms. Cabral, Mr. Iavino, can you explain where Ms. Cabral is coming from? What is at stake here again, if you could?
Well, what's at stake is simply the fact that she made an error in her retirement letter and should have read July 1 as opposed to June 30th.
Okay.
And because of that omission, it's possible that she may lose the 17 vacation days that were owed to her for this past school year.
Okay. Okay, so there you have it from Mr. Iavino. We've heard from Ms. Cabral. We're going to hear from her again in a second, but let's hear from the first time, Mr. Winslow.
Just to clarify, I mean, is this as a result that vacation accrues on July 1st? Is that basically that, so if you worked for the preceding year, your vacation accrues on that date? Is that sort of, I mean, and if you're not working on that date, you don't get it? Is that?
And this, I'm sorry.
Yeah. Are you all set, Mr. Winslow? Mr.
Yeah,
Iavino?
That was my understanding, but she just wanted to put it in line with the state retirement date, which is July 1, of the State Teachers Retirement Board.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Iavino. Ms. Cabral.
What's the actual cost?
Okay, Ms. Cabral to Mr. Iavino, or?
No, I have no idea what the cost would be.
Okay, let's have the superintendent interject. Superintendent Tarusi?
Yes, it is in the ballpark of $7,000. I don't have that number right in my head right now, but I know that we've already played this out.
Okay, and Superintendent Tarusi, could we ask you also for a recommendation here? I mean, I assume you've studied Mr. Iavino's request. What say you?
I would say that you are looking at a woman who provided multiple years of service to a district. She's asking that she made a mistake in the date. She wants to align it with the state's retirement of July 1st. If it's a question of absorbing this in the budget, it can be absorbed in this year's budget. So it really comes down to the vote of a school committee at this point as to, you know, where they see their level of appreciation of a professionals in the years in. And I think that's all I can really say to this either way.
If I might, from the chair, Superintendent, you're saying this is commonplace. This isn't some anomaly that is happening here tonight. This is an inadvertent error?
I believe it was. I mean, in retrospect, if you were asking me when my last day of work would be, I would say June 30th, not realizing that July 1st would be what the state's asking me on. Isn't it an abnormally? This is, you know, as a really a new superintendent, there are a lot of abnormalities. This is a first for me, but I think the way it's been explained to me and Nancy's, you know, request is what it is. She's asking that. She was not aware of the July 1st date.
I guess in other words, what I was asking you, Superintendent, is most people in her position would have used the July 1st date.
Again, I can't answer to that. I'm not sure.
Okay. Any other questions? We have a couple of options here where Ms. Cabral has raised some concerns. We could table this for 1 month, or we could take action right here and then. Do the members feel they have enough information and understand everything that's going on here? What's the pleasure of the committee? Mr. Kasucci.
Could we run it by Greenspan to make sure there's no legal implications, or we're setting a precedence that...
Okay, and you're talking Howard Greenspan, our
Yes.
school attorney.
Yes.
Okay, would the sponsor object to waiting? Is there any implication by waiting 1 month, Mr. Iavino?
I don't have an objection to it. I just think that this, to me, in my mind, is a no-brainer. Here we talk about treating our employees in a fair and equitable manner. We have somebody here who gave 22 years to the system and many nights to the system. I would move the question. I would make that motion.
Okay, so we have a motion by Mr. Iavino to move the question, and seconded by Mr. Weldy. So, unless I'm mistaken, I believe we have to take the question up first. The only thing that could stop the question, if I'm not mistaken, is a motion to table. So we have the motion, we have a second by Mr. Weldy, and we now have to take the question up. So is everybody clear on the question? Just to reiterate one more time, Mr. Iavino, can you just restate your motion?
My motion is to allow Mrs. Kasabian to have her retirement date with the City of Malden read July 1, 2012, to be in line with her retirement date through the Massachusetts Teachers Retirement System, which also states her retirement officially as July 1, 2012.
Okay, and you second that, Mr. Weldy? Okay. Clerk will call the roll.
Ms. Brown? No. Mr. Pasucci?
Yes.
Ms. DiMaria? Yes. Ms. Doucette? Mr. Ferrero?
Yes.
Mr. Iavino?
Yes.
Mr. Weldy?
Yes.
Mr. Winslow?
Yes.
Mayor Christian?
Yes. Okay, motion carries 8-1. Next order of business, we are on item 4 under consent agenda, which is school uniforms survey. And this will be presented by Ms. DiMaria.
Mr. Chairman, in your packet, I prepared a survey or a tentative survey to reach out to the guardians and parents of our district with regard to an opportunity or possibility of uniforms. I am also doing a lot of work. I've asked our attorney, Greenspan, if there's a legality issue. I would like, and I'm in an attempt to partner with the school committee on this project. I'm hoping that I can get a couple of you to be willing to assist me in this project. It's not saying we're going to move forward with it, but there is a lot of homework to be done before we even consider it, and I do think it's a valid opportunity for our students. There's many reasons why a uniformed student works better, learns better, it goes on and on. So I think at this level, if this is a tentative survey, I know that it probably needs tweaking, and I would really welcome a few of you to join me with this project. And once we get it done, of course, it would be in multi-language. So that would be my big, so thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. DiMaria. Questions of the members? Ms. Doucette.
Thank you, Mr. Chairperson. I remember sitting on the policy committee, and Debbie and Ms. DiMaria and I were talking about this. I would like to help you out with it because I also think that would be great. It would deter bullying. That would be one of the biggest things. My only question would be, what type of uniform are you looking at? Would it be something where it would have a school name on it, or would it just be a dress code as opposed to a uniform?
Well, if I might, from the chair, I presume that would evolve from the study. So, let's go to Mr. Froyo.
I just want to ask the superintendent, would Linden School be included in this, or do they take their own vote with their board?
Ms. Superintendent DeRusi.
Linden has already moved with a vote to look at having a uniform.
Thank you, Mr. Froyo. Any other questions? Mr. Weldy?
I just stayed up front. I do not support uniforms, but I do support reaching out to parents, and I support you, so I will help you in any way you need. My only suggestion is that, depending on when you get this out, waiting till December 1st might allow people a lot of time to put it down, forget about it, and not return it. So that would be my only suggestion, is to shorten the window to see if you can get more responses, because the more the better for your data. But, I'll help in whatever way you need, Debbie.
Yes, he will be. Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Weldy. Ms. Cabral?
I also would be willing to help with this project. I also want to know, is this something that's going to be available electronically so that parents can fill out?
Yes, I did have that on there, yep.
Okay,
When
thank
we
you.
get to that level, yep. And in the media and multi-language, and that'd be great. Okay.
Thank you, Ms. Cabral. Anybody else have a question? Mr. Casucci?
I would just like to comment, and I think, I support the dress code, as opposed to a uniform, because it would be more expensive. And if you need any help, I'm here, and anything you'd like, I definitely, and one other thing is less distractions in the classroom when everyone's more uniform and no half shirts and what's so, but no one else mentioned that. But thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Casucci. Mr. Weldy?
Just a question for the superintendent. When's the next time we're sending out one of our surveys? Yeah, the K-12 Insight, the electronic surveys.
Working on that with K-12. To answer that, as I'm working on that with K-12 right now, we should have it out hopefully the first week in November.
Oh, so soon. It'd be great if we
could add, I would send something out to add that piece to it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Weldy. Thank you, Superintendent Tarusi. Any other discussion? Mr. Froyo for a second time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Would it be appropriate to ask our student member of the school committee what she thinks?
Great idea. We'll add her to the committee. Thank you, Ms. Poria. Appreciate that.
I think school uniforms are a great idea. I kind of wish that Ferryway had them when I went there. I personally don't mind not having the burden of trying to figure out, what outfit am I going to wear today, when I probably could have been spending 10 minutes more doing my homework. But I think it would be really good for, bullying and distraction in the classroom as well.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Ms. Poria. So we'll have Ms. Poria assist Ms. DiMaria. Any other questions? Good suggestion, Mr. Froyo. Anybody else? Everybody understands where we're going here? So this doesn't require a motion. Ms. DiMaria, you're not looking for a formal motion at this point? I don't think so. Yeah, I don't think so, unless the committee feels differently. All right, any other discussion? Next order of business, personal privilege. Here's the layout from here on in. We're going to go over points of personal privilege. Then we're going to entertain a motion to go into executive session for the purposes of negotiation. Upon our return to open session, it will only be for the purpose of adjourning. There will be no further business conducted this evening. So with that being said, points of personal privilege, left to right. Anybody have points of personal privilege? Mr. Froyo.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I attended the Malden High Alumni Association's homecoming yesterday. The mayor was in attendance, and Mr. Weldy and Mr. Iavino. And it really turned out to be a great day. We had about 130 people there from all different graduates of, all different years of graduating from Malden High. We sang the school song. We had Jordan Shapiro and a friend who does a lot of entertaining. He did a great job playing the music, and it was really a good time. One other thing also, the Linden STEAM Academy is having a Halloween party on Friday night, October 19th at 6 o'clock. So any of you Linden STEAM Academy students, be there at 6 o'clock on the 19th of October. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Froyo. Anybody else have points of personal privilege to my left? To my right, Ms. DiMaria.
Yes, quickly, I just wanted to to tell everyone that our all-district PTO group got together this week, and there will be a 7th and 8th grade all-district Roller World event on November 8th. Thank you.
And what time is that, Ms. DeMaria?
I know that's what I was delaying. I'm not quite sure. I'm
Okay.
sorry.
All right. Any other points of personal privilege, Mr. Winslow?
Yeah, I just want to thank the staff and the high school and Salem Wood School for their patience and inconveniences now that the Northern Strand Trail that has gone through there, I know it's made some changes to parking and that type of thing, and I just wanted to thank staff for making those accommodations, and everybody for their patience as it's coming to fruition. So thank you so much for the mayor, too, for that effort, but also wanted to recognize staff's patience on that.
Thank you, Mr. Winslow, and thank you to you and your organization. You have, once again, as I think we all feel, have proven what hard work and dedication means. How long? 20 years?
20th anniversary this year.
Unbelievable. Okay, thank you, Mr. Winslow. Ms. Cabral.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd just like to say special congratulations to the Ferryway School for attaining their Level 1 status. Also, the Ferryway PTO is putting on, I believe this is their 6th annual International Food Festival on October 19th at 6:30 in the cafeteria. So please come by and sample all of the wonderful food from all the different countries that are at the Ferryway School. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Ms. Cabral. Mr. Waldeck.
I'll echo Ms. Cabral's statements and kudos to the Salem Wood School for reaching their Level 1 status as well. And kudos to Dr. Chase. I think this was her first presentation in front of the school committee, and we've seen a lot of MCAS presentations, and this was one of the better ones I've seen in many years, so thank you, Dr. Chase. Have a happy and safe Halloween. Councilor Murphy and I are hosting the Ward 5 Halloween party, which will be at the Forestdale School cafeteria on Sunday, October 28th from 4 to 7 p.m. The only entry or admittance fee is for parents to bring a bag of candy for the candy parade, which I believe Mayor Christensen was a star of last year. So you're all invited to the Halloween party on the 28th. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Depends on who you talk to, Mr. Waldeck. Appreciate that. And if I might, from the chair, a couple of notes. I want to remind the school committee that this Thursday we'll be having the Changing Lanes bowling tournament at Town Line Luxury Lanes on Broadway, and that'll begin at 5 p.m., and I think it will get over somewhere around 10 o'clock. Some extremely good news for all of you here tonight. As you know, this event is a continuation of what Mayor Howard had done for many, many years, and the purpose of the event is to raise funds for our student athletes. And the one and only Carol Ann Desiderio, who has been leading the way on this this task, told me tonight that we are currently at $31,000 raised for our student athletes. So can't say enough about her and Rich Bransfield, Dan Keefe, and everybody else that's been involved on putting this event together. So I hope to see many of you on Thursday night beginning at 5 o'clock. A couple other notes, if you can, in your calendar, the Veterans Day Parade will be held November 11th. The time, I think, is still being worked out because that is on a Sunday, so we want to make sure that we account for our houses of worship, so it might start a little bit later than it typically has in the past, but as always, our Veterans Services Day Director, Kevin Jarvis, along with the American Legion, are keeping to the day, which I've always appreciated as an elected official. So that'll be November 11th. November 22nd, obviously, is the 125th game between Malden and Medford. That game begins at 10 a.m. in Malden, McDonald Stadium. Tickets, I believe, will be on sale soon if they're not already. And then finally, the holiday parade, the Parade of Holiday Traditions, will be on Saturday, November 24th. And the only slight change this year will be lifting off at 12 noon. All right, instead of 10 a.m. That'll be 12 noon. Okay, any other questions, queries, qualms, concerns? Otherwise, we are going to entertain a motion for executive session. And again, when we come back out, we are going to adjourn in honor of Catherine Poria, a new Malden High School student representative who is a senior at Malden High School and an active member of the Malden community already. Typically, people wait until 10, 15 years later, you're already doing more than people have in a lifetime for the city of Malden. So we're going to adjourn in your honor tonight. So we want to say thank you for doing this for us, and we look forward to working with you. Okay, so we have a motion to go into executive session by Mr. Froyo. We have a second by Mr. Kasucci, and again, this is for the purposes of negotiations. Clerk will call the roll.
Ms. Cabral? Yes. Mr. Kasucci?
Yes.
Mr. DiMaria? Yes. Mr. Sapp? Mr. Florio?
Yes.
Mr. Ivy?
Yes.
Mr. Waldine?
Yes.
Mr. Winslow?
Yes.
Mayor Christensen?
Yes. Motion carries unanimously.